Good evening, UFO people of the interwebs. I'm Alexa, the resident ookie spooky girly, and my goodness, it's been quite the time for alien, UAP, and UFO knowledge lately. Thanks to the Congress meeting that we've all been hearing about, it's been the topic of intrigue on everyone's tongues lately, myself included. Question for y'all, what's your take on the current events? Let me know in the comments, and welcome to the top 5 alien stories proven true during the UFO Congressional hearing. Number 5, claims from David Grusch. Alrighty, so before I completely get into everything, I'd like to elaborate on just how credible this witness is. Whistleblower David Charles Grusch is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and the NRO, where he served as a representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July of 2022, he was the NGA co-lead for UAP analysis and is representative to the task force led by the Department of the Navy under the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. At the NGO, David served as a Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer, cleared at the top secret compartmented information level. Which, yeah, that's a lot of words. Big word salad. I'll elaborate. From 2016 to 2021, he served with the NRO as Senior Intelligence Officer and led the production of the NRO Director's Daily Briefing. He was a GS-15 civilian, which is the military equivalent of a colonel, and has numerous awards and decorations for his participation in covert and clandestine operations to advance American security. David said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades, through to the present day, by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. He said that the craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity, and that individuals on these UAP programs have approached him in his official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisition regulations and other criminality, and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. Associates who vouched for David said his information was highly sensitive, proving evidence that materials from objects of non-human origin are in possession of highly secret government programs. Well, would you look at that? Multiple government witnesses. Although locations, program names, and other specific data remain classified, the Inspector General and Intelligence Committee staff were provided with these details. Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of non-human origin based on vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. So once again, they are of non-human origin. The investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the program, and they corroborated this information. David is certain that the information has in the past been illegally withheld from Congress to intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. He has also filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures. In his statements, David claimed that UFO legacy programs have long been concealed within multiple agencies, nesting UAP activities in conventional secret access programs without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. According to the unclassified complaint, in July of 2021, he had confidentially provided classified information to the Department of Defense Inspector General concerning the withholding of UAP-related information from Congress. Christopher Mellon, who spent nearly 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community and served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, has worked with Congress for years on UAP stuff. He has mentioned that a number of well-placed current and former officials have shared detailed information with them, including the location where a craft was abandoned and recovered. He claims the reason more folks haven't come forward is due to a lack of trust in the leadership of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office established by Congress. Go figure. The assumption that the United States alone has bullied the other nations into maintaining the secrecy for nearly a century continues to prevail as the primary consensus amongst the public at large. So, you're telling me that credible US officials have been adamant that the government's hiding things? Number 4, the Go Faster video. So this video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group to the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. The video in question was taken in 2015 off of the East Coast by a FA-18F fighter jet using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-228 Advanced Targeting Forward Looking Infrared Pod, also known as ATF-LIR, which that was a mouthful, and I know myself way too well. If I keep saying that, I'm gonna trip. So we're just gonna call it ATF. ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. It should be noted that it's good at spotting, but not engaging aerial targets. The video that we're talking about, nicknamed Go Fast by To The Stars, starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. Things like the aircraft's altitude, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. The readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots, and in a 75-degree turn, and the unknown object was approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. The video shows the Super Hornet's weapons system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which, can pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapons systems officer, or WSO, shouts, "Whoa, got it!" To which another person, assumed to be the pilot, says, "Woohoo, whoa! What the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks, and the WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude," to which the pilot replies, "Okay, what is it?" So, couple of things to note. The UFO does not have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, appearing to emit no heat on the ATF sensor, and to further explain why this is a UFO, it doesn't have any visible wings or fins. Through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles such as the American Tomahawk or Russian Caliber have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles such as the Maverick anti-tank missile have stubby fins. The UFO appears oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of travel, which that's kind of what, our planes do. In third place, we have the tales of Edgar Mitchel. Though Edgar was an Apollo astronaut who passed away in 2018 at the age of 85 and had many theories about aliens that he often shared with the public. He believed aliens are real and UFOs from extraterrestrials have visited us before, publicly stating that he thought there was a cover-up involving aliens and their visits to Earth. As the 6th man to walk on the moon and a NASA astronaut, his theories and beliefs were among the most credible of UFO believers. Not only was Edgar an astronaut, but he was also a test pilot for the Navy, had an MS in aeronautical engineering, and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1970. Part of his belief in alien life stemmed from experiences he had returning to Earth from the moon, where he felt more connected with the universe than he ever had before. Edgar has said publicly that he's 90% sure that many of the unidentified flying objects recorded since the 1940s belong to aliens from other planets. When he started speaking out in the late 1990s, he said he was then only coming out with his knowledge because he didn't want to be labeled as a UFO crank, and stood by his beliefs, no matter how much he was criticized. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said there were alien bodies at Roswell, but the government covered it up. In 1998, he called on Washington, D.C. to acknowledge publicly what it knew about alien life. He said he had witnesses he knew personally from intelligence agencies and the military who convinced him that the US government had been covering up UFOs for 50 years, including that evidence that I just mentioned from Roswell. In 2018, he was interviewed and spoke about how the Roswell crash was real, and aliens had contacted humans multiple times. Interestingly enough, Edgar's beliefs were in line with those of Philip James Corso, who was chief of U.S. Counterintelligence Corp in Rome in the 1940s and chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk in the 1960s. He even wrote a book, The Day After Roswell, where he said that he moved alien artifacts from the Roswell crash, which were later reverse engineered to develop some of our more advanced technology. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said that he had met with officials from 3 other countries who had personal encounters with aliens from other planets, not just second-handed information. The evidence of alien contact was strong and classified, including that extraterrestrials were giving technology to the US government. In 2004, Edgar said that the government was studying alien bodies, but stopped sharing that information with presidents after John F. Kennedy. During a radio interview, he said that aliens were far more advanced than us, and we would have been gone a long time ago if they were hostile. Now, while I don't agree with everything he said, this was brought up at Congress. In second place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in the area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at the airport, watched the objects on the radar scope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. The movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working normally. He then called National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had also, found unidentified blips on their radar screen, and saw a hovering bright light in the sky that was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. At this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. That airman being William Brady, who was in the tower. He saw an object which appeared to be like an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the object, took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pyramid was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects objects closing in on his position. Pearman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the lights streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on their scope. Meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south where the light would appear to stand still and then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking this object, hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force jets from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington, all of the objects went pfft. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. The objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m., and the government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. Number 1. The Nimitz Tic Tac. On November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't really detect the object, but Alex's weapons systems operator in the rear seat, witnessed it as well. She has quoted her recollection as, "We were trying to call out what we were seeing to each other and making sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and that our radio calls just can't keep up with it." A majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots are trained at what they call REAS, short for reconnaissance, and referring more specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Now, I'll let the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and explain speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. Around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. Triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for the equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he described what he was seeing as impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the night and during the day, and it was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what it was we were tracking? No." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. I'm just gonna give the Pentagon my usual dose of side-eye. Don't mind me. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I commend all of the whistleblowers and informants for risking everything they did by coming forward for the good of humanity. I'm so glad all of this information is finally becoming rightful public knowledge. If you enjoyed today's video, could y'all help us out by giving it a like, subscribing if you aren't already, and why not also just hit the bell for more out-of-this-world content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.